So I want to talk about parenting a little bit right now. I think it's super important because it's very much similar to management and dealing with people and all those kind of things. I'm not saying that I'm a perfect parent. I'm not saying that that I'm great at parenting. I'm not saying I'm great at managing or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But I actually just want to talk about it because I think it's super important as we grow and develop as people, because it sort of reflects on us, how we deal with situations. So parenting is... Oh, by the way, if you don't know me, I'm Professor Dave Maslach. I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I want to pay the favor forward to help you out. So we have to remember, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in life is that there is a emotional reaction that we have, most of us actually have, and there's also sort of a thoughtful reaction that we can have, or a standing, I don't know what the name, I forget what the name is called, but where you sit outside of yourself and you think about how would I like to react in this circumstance. So the immediate reaction that most of us get with parenting is sort of an emotional response. It's life in general, right? Like that's how most of us actually sort of deal with things. We have an emotional response, that immediate response, and we want to not be, that's what happens. But you can also take a stance where you are thinking about how you want to react in this circumstance and how you want to deal with this situation. So you're going to have that immediate emotional response. But in your mind, you're thinking about, how do I actually want this thing to go? And then you take that step back and you act like somebody else. It's almost like an act. It's almost like you're imagining yourself acting and thinking through these things. Whenever there's a moment of, you're dealing with your kids, for example, and your kids are being complete jackasses, taking a step back, and you can scream at them and yell at them, but then you can take a step back and say, hey, do I actually want to do this? Is this the right course of actions? Am I actually going to, get where, are we going to have a, thoughtful conversation here? And most times yelling and screaming and all that sort of coercive stuff does not work. It's a really, or manipulation, all those kind of things. It does not typically work. It works in the short run, but then the other person does not feel great about it. And then you're going to end up not fixing the situation. So what you often have to do is take that step back and think about, how can we deal with this situation and respond to it appropriately, and view yourself in the third person as you're going through this. And as you could sort of remove yourself from the situation, the more that you're going to be able to deal with it, and you thoughtfully think through these kind of things, where it is that we get these emotional reactions. That's completely natural. That's being a human being. But taking that step back and saying, hey, how can I deal with this? What is it that we want to actually accomplish? What's a good end goal? And sort of thinking about these things and rationally walking through these things can be very helpful. And the other thing to remember in parenting and disputes and those kind of things is, the other people often actually have a point. And you have to think about, how is it that you can arrive upon a mutually agreeable option or alternative. And what you need to do is take your guard down and say, hey, you know what you're saying is actually, there's some truth to that. You're actually, what you're doing is or what you're saying is right. You need to have that acknowledgement. The other person needs to have that acknowledgement. But you have to sort of steer people in a different direction and how to actually deal with it, where you steer them in and encourage them to go in a different direction. And as you're doing that, sorry, I'm losing, I should have a drink here. As you're doing that, you're trying to steer the conversation, steer the direction towards what you would hope to accomplish. I know it seems like it's manipulative and all those kind of things. It's really not. It's actually taking... So manipulation would be doing this to have, outcome that is doing this kind of behavior, to have an outcome that is only beneficial for you. But the ultimate goal with parenting is not to have good kids. It's not to have quiet kids. It's to have good adults that when they're 40 years old, they're going to know how to deal with a similar situation. It's a big difference, and it's very different. And so you want to teach them the skills of how to deal with some of this dispute resolution, and whether it's when they're little, the sort of sharing thing comes up all the time, right? And so what you need to do is figure out how do you share properly. So you might have some sort of schedule where it's okay, they get it. And other person gets it for 5 minutes, you get it for 5 minutes, and rotate back and forth. Or you try to come up with, hey, maybe this thing is better for you for the time being, and then we're going to switch up, and then you do something else. And that works really well. But there's also, moments of where that there is just, anger or emotions and all of these things that come up, especially later on, that are not easily explainable, and you need to take a step back and say, hey, let's just kind of have a conversation about it, and talking about your own feelings as a parent, and letting them know that, hey, we don't feel, there's a lot of moments in life where we don't feel great, but we have to learn how to work through these things and deal with them. It's a part of life to have those moments that you don't feel great, but you still learn how to walk through them and take that step forward, regardless of how you actually feel, or leaning into it of, okay, I've got these things that are not making me feel good. What do I do in this circumstance? It's hard to deal with that kind of stuff. And all of these things are very applicable to immediate management. We all of us are a bunch of 5-year-olds walking around in adult bodies, and we need to think about how to deal with that. Think about how to manage that. And some people are less self-aware of that they actually are, a kid deep down inside, a 5-year-old deep down inside, and you have to walk them through a little bit more in a patient manner. That's what being a good parent and what being a good manager is all about, is thinking about how you can walk people through, so that they feel empowered, they feel good about themselves, they feel like a decent human being, and they come out of it smiling out of the situation. It's not easy to do, but it's a lesson that you have to constantly be teaching yourself and thinking about what is the good outcome here. So with that, hopefully you've got something out of this little talk. Appreciate you listening, and take care and have a wonderful day.